Hello, everyone. It's Thursday. It means it's another edition of the MSP Initiative Live. Do you believe we've been doing this like every week, twice a week, damn near since March of 2020? There's a lot of sessions.
Yeah, you're in 3 months in.
A lot of sessions. We kept it up. It's good stuff, good times. But that's just the technology field, right? It's always moving. It's always cracking. So always something good going on. You get I think, Alec, you were telling me before we came on that, what was it? 4 years ago today, we were at DattoCon Austin.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a good one. Great barbecue.
Yeah, I remember that rainy street, man. No joke. No joke. I mean, it's not Bourbon Street, but it's still good times.
No, it is. No, that was a great conference. We had a lot of fun there. It was a lot of partners. I remember the party was absolutely packed to the gills at Stubbs.
Yeah. Well, Stubbs was the
Datto official party. Yeah.
That was the official party, but on Rainy Street, right? You had there was like competing events, right? We had all the bars up until the barbecue place at the end, right?
We did. MSP Initiative had the 3 venues locked down. It was Container Bar, something on Rainy, and there was like a tequila bar at the end. That was also really cool.
But I see Keith's like, I will remain silent. You don't have to remain silent, Keith. You brought some
actually cool. Keith dropped some really good tidbits at the end there that, I mean, you turn around, you're like, we could do an entire session on that. So,
well, yeah, I mean, he talked about value-based pricing, and everyone's like, I need to learn about that instead of per user or per device. You know what? I'm actually going to bring him on. Let's talk about value-based pricing, Keith. You ready? Here we go. Boom. Whenever you're ready, come and join us. Value-based
good morning.
pricing. How are you? How are you today in sunny California?
Excellent. Always good.
So let me ask you a question. Did it actually, and I got my other friend Darren here from San Diego, did it actually happen? Did this lockdown finally lift? Can you go outside without a mask on now?
No. Right after the governor did what he didn't do, then some local municipalities, there's really no direction. And so it seems to be some places say no mask, some say mask. I just bring one with me because, most of the people enforcing masks are minimum wage employees. It's not their choice. They're just sitting there doing their job. I'm not going to fight with them about the value of a mask.
Yeah, especially if it's not smelly enough yet to wash, right? Yeah.
So, it's no real change that I saw in California.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear that. It's summertime and people need to walk and not be able to while it's hot outside, breathe, right? I mean, that's just me, but okay.
When COVID first started, I don't know if in my local town, I'm a small potato. Anyway, I head up the ethics panel, so I'm kind of known between officials. And a cop comes pulling up next to me, and I have my top down. He goes, "Hey," I go, "What?" He goes, "You supposed to be wearing a mask?" And I go, "I have no idea." He goes, "Neither do I." And he drove off.
Here you go. I'm going to bring my other friend Darren on since we're on the California show. Darren, when you want to jump in, feel free to unmute. But Darren's down in originally New Yorker, but now
I'm still a New Yorker. I'm still a New Yorker. I just spent some time in California, but it's a very simple policy. It's that if you are not wearing a mask, you are attesting that you are fully vaccinated. That is the policy. And in my condo building, so it's most everywhere else now, it is totally fine to not have a mask. You're just letting people know that by not having a mask, you're vaccinated. And if you are wearing them, if you are not vaccinated, then you have to wear a mask. That's basically across the board from, a restaurant to a store to, buildings. So that's what I've seen happen everywhere in the last couple of days. And, here in my building, we're just going by the state guideline, which is what that is. Now, most employers are going to keep requiring masks. There's a Cal OSHA, which is a regulating body that can make those kinds of rules. As of now, I think they actually have a meeting today or tonight or something that might change this. But as of now, they're keeping employers wearing masks. So if you're working at the restaurant, then you still have to wear a mask, et cetera. But that could change. But it is, and I can tell you, at least in San Diego, it has been seemingly wide open for months. Now, San Diego is not necessarily representative of the rest of California, but it is, you know, there's been like, 25% capacity and places have been full, you know, I mean, which is fine. Like, I'm totally cool with that. So and yesterday, I mean, or the 15th was basically like, okay, you know, it's back to fully normal here. So
well, that is better news. And to Keith's point, right? If the cops don't know what to do, then they're not going to do anything either. I mean, the fact that they're still giving
that's great news that San Diego's so open, because my daughter's a student at San Diego State.
Yeah.
And she's looking to return.
Yep.
They kind of closed down on her last year.
And they're going to keep, I mean, most of, I think the colleges are requiring vaccination, or some of them are.
That's a slippery slope, right? What if you have a health condition that?
Right. Well, of course, you know, it's one of those things. You know, for better or worse, I got vaccinated because I couldn't deal with the whole situation, basically. So it's, you know, I don't want to misrepresent to anybody that I'm walking around without a mask and not vaccinated. It just, you know, so I got the J&J and said, okay, it is what it is. So, you know,
well, I'm sure there's a lot of that for sure.
But there will be a lot of people, I'm sure, that will not get vaccinated, but say, okay, well, I'm not going to, you know, until people are checking vaccine cards, which, you know, may end up happening at some point.
I mean, listen, I mean, we talk about cybersecurity and all this other stuff all day long. Like, it's like a Xerox cardboard, like, you know, card stock with just a label. I mean, there's no, where's the database for that, right? It's very easy to.
Well, like I got it, interestingly, like I got it at CVS, you know, in New York, because I do spend a lot of time in New York. I'm still a New Yorker, to be clear, for anybody monitoring this, you know, so, you know, and they, as soon as I got it, I got an email, like within minutes, there's like, you know, thank you for getting your vaccination. Your record is available on, you know, in our health repository, you know, which I'm sure will be made public to, you know, all of the powers that be, if it isn't already, you know, so it's, I don't know how other places handle it, but it's like the card was, you know, they gave me the card, but it was like, oh no, it's permanently part of your CVS health record, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. So, well,
once they, you know, I'm curious to see, you know, not that we want to get, you know, on the tangent here, but once the border with Canada opens up, and once you can fly internationally without like too much problems in terms of the hoops that you have to fly through, like UK is like, still, you know, another month before they kind of let people start coming in, whatever. But I think that'll feel a lot better, right? I mean, especially for, you know, back to normal.
It's happening pretty quickly. I mean, Italy, Greece, a couple other European countries have already come forward and said, yeah, if you're vaccinated and you can prove it, you can come over. No problems, no quarantine, just.
Or you just have to take a small stock of COVID tests, but the ones that would come with an actual report, not the ones that, like, you know, it's like a pregnancy test. Like, you know, you crack it open and put it up your nose and give you a color.
I'm wondering when the airport flying thing will, you know, because airports are busier to me, the ones that I've been in, which are several over the last couple of months. They're as busy as 2019.
Agree.
And maybe busier in certain cases. And it's the whole, you know, the whole thing is, you know, oh yeah, take your mask off to eat and drink and put it back on. I mean, it's, as soon as you do that, you invalidate the whole thing, but that's another story. I mean, so it would be nice if that, you know, if that was to eventually, or sooner than later, go back to, okay, if you want to wear one, great. And there'll be people that will forever wear a mask, and that's fine. You know,
let's hope, because these conferences are coming up, and
oh yeah,
and some people are ugly and they need a mask. Is that what he's saying?
I think George looks much better with the mask, to be honest. You know.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that, by the way.
No, I found what I found interesting is, and I don't know I signed up for flying to Austin,
okay,
or San Antonio, whatever that one is, and I went on and upgraded my seats, and they said, well, put your card in your with my United, and so I'm wondering, do I have, since I entered it, with your TSA pre-check and all that on that page, do I need to carry it around now?
Well, you entered what card did you enter?
My vaccine card.
They had an option for you to enter.
I haven't seen that at any. I fly Delta and JetBlue. Have not seen that as even an option. So maybe for international flights it will be. No, but I haven't heard of that. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it was with I think it was United, and it said upload a picture of your card. And I said, okay, whatever. I'm a card carrying.
I mean, I've flown American, Southwest, JetBlue. I've never had an option for that. So it must be something, maybe United, because maybe United is doing international flights, possibly. Yeah, but I know. By the way, Alec is way against United. He's on the anti-United fan club for sure.
Yeah, never again.
When you go with the channel, though, you get your ticket, and then you have to go online and register it. Yeah, it's United. I just checked my itinerary. You have to, get your ticket, then do your own upgrade.
But what is that doing, right? You still have to wear the mask. You still, I mean, like, I don't know. Okay.
It didn't specifically say that, by the way, George. I thought it said, because the flight is in August. It said, these are our current regulations. We will notify you before your flight if they have changed. So it wasn't committed to, you'll have to wear a mask in August.
September is when the TSA is supposed to review it and announce if it's cut or continues on.
Interesting.
Yeah, so
good. Yeah, everybody watch out, because if you're going to start going to, what is it, September, October, November, right? It's like that machine gun of events, right? That, we'll see how it all shakes out then. Or you could just drive everywhere too. I mean, we do that. We just
get a bus.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Keith, let's get back to that first topic. So you've really stirred up, hey, like, I'm going to charge what I think your value-based billing versus, hey, this is how much I charge per user, per device, per location. So I think people are really intrigued because to some degree, it's the argument like, hey, you only spent a half hour to fix this issue. And it's like, well, maybe I spent a half hour. Somebody else would have spent 2 hours, is because I bring more experience to the table doing this thing. And so I charge my fee. It's no different than the attorneys, no different than than the people like in the professional services field. So I'm curious if, and again, I'm not asking you to share any industry, kind of trade secrets here, but like, how does one go about doing value-based pricing for business services, technology services, whatever you want to call it, not necessarily MSP. We talked about that last time. How do you start that conversation? And how do you figure out math?
Well, first of all, your math is probably the same as your base math is probably the same as your per device or per site.
Okay.
You have the cost of your RMM, the cost of your antivirus, the cost your amortizing your PSA, or cost your office. So you have this and this is how we do it. We're not, we could be wrong. You can tell me at the end of this, Keith, you're stupid. But so we have an idea of what our blended rate per hour plus our lift is.
Okay.
So I know that X number of dollars, so we, first of all, when people sell, we sell. I go, selling sucks. We listen. So when we go on a sales call, and there was a question the other day, how do you open a sales call? I go, I open my ears, because the less I talk, the less I could say something stupid. So I you listen to what they need, and you start talking about their business initiatives. And so as we do that, we look at what we can use as far as development, integration, or customization of what they have to enhance their process. So at the Port of LA, we wrote that entire system. They said we need to dispatch workers. We need to do this. IBM was in the mix, Perot Systems at the time, Intergraph, some older companies.
Some big names.
And we were just a little 4-man company. We beat them out because we sat down with the union, who was a big player in this, and instead of telling them how to do their job, which insulted them, we said, walk us through this. And we came up with a different approach. IBM came in there and said, we could tell you how to do your job better. And they said, well, get out of our hall. We actually committed to saying, we're not going to write any software until we sit and watch you do your job. So we're not going to sit here and bring in, we're not going to use software to change your processes. We're going to use technology to enhance your processes. Now, if you're familiar with the Longshore Union, and they have a thing called Workers' Choice. There's a holiday called Bloody Thursday, which they celebrate around July 4th, which they give up July 4th and celebrate Bloody Thursday because people died for this right. I mean, there was actually riots. They call it Bloody Thursday. So knowing that history, we knew you don't touch Workers' Choice. IBM had better suits and ties than we did, but weren't smart enough to know the history. So they started saying, we'll change Workers' Choice and change your process. And the union goes back and says, look at the wall. There's a mural of people getting killed over this. We're not giving up this right. So we actually took sticky notes because that we stuck them on a wall. Tell us your process. Write down what you do next. And so that's why I think when we talked about what terminals are named, we didn't rename things. They said that's called a chalkboard. Well, at that time, it was a chalkboard with lines and a guy sat on the ladder and wrote jobs on it. And then if someone took a job, they'd erase it and change the number. So when we put these big digital projectors and screens of a chalkboard, you know what it's called? Chalkboard. It's still a chalkboard. It's a night board. Someone says, I'm doing the software and my developer says, by the way, what does REAP mean? I said, I don't know exactly what that stands for, but that means you're getting a replacement. I said, some acronym between that, and I go, but it doesn't matter. They said, call it a REAP. We've called it a REAP for 100 years, call it a REAP. So as you do that and you're enhancing the process, you're really not talking about a per device, a per use, a per, where you're involved in a discussion that says this will, and they tell you, this will enhance our business. This will allow us to get dispatchers out quicker to the job and save the industry X number of dollars. And that's what they told us. And so I looked at it and said, well, X number of dollars is on the table. Let's talk.
So they literally put up, well, this is what it's costing us. This is what we're spending to do what we're doing now. And that was your starting point to work backwards.
No, I knew that I couldn't take all of it, but that was my starting point to back off of. And that's a simple question that people miss. If I do this for you, how am I helping your business? I went to a hotel and there was all these, did an open bid. They said, come people talk about our computer technology. Everyone went in there with their pretty PowerPoint and their nice suit and their good looking guys. And I walk in and they say, oh shit, who's this? No presentation. They said, well, I said, what I want to do is find out what you need. You already know who I am. You called me. So why should I do this whole half hour? I'm just really an awesome guy. And I said, let me hear what you need. And I said, what would enhance your guest experience? And the owners of the hotel turned to me and said, you're the first one that asked about our guest. And then I came up with ideas. I said, what if we can get your folio on a single sheet of paper? And they had a spa and they had, and you check out the hotel and you get like a couple different folios. They said, oh, that'd be awesome. And then I said, what if we allowed business people to just say in-room entertainment instead of naming the movie? Code in there for you guys that traveled years ago before you had internet. And they'd say, yeah, that would help because a lot of people call up and say, can you put that on a separate charge? Because they don't want the people in accounting to know what in-home entertainment was. in-room entertainment. So just little things. And it's a matter of knowing your client. And all of a sudden, we're not talking about a cost center. We're talking about an enhancement. And then I come back and say, how about if we monetize some of your systems? You know, instead of you paying me to put Wi-Fi, what if we make that a profit center and we just split it? And so we had ad rolling and things you see at convention centers. You say, remember, it's not, and I learned this in doing some government work, as most of voluntary, people don't care what they spend if they're spending someone else's money.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
And you'll find that if you know, I do that because I advocate for special needs. And I go to the state and I say, will you approve this? I found federal money. And no one says, oh, well, that's still a waste of money. They go, well, that's okay. It's not out of my pocket. You know, and you'll see that in schools and so on. And the same in commercial clients. If I can help you increase your revenue, you're really not paying me anything. And so you start value basing your services because you're not a trusted advisor. You're not an MSP. You're not all the buzzwords. You're part of the team. And you're looking at ways to jointly enhance their business.
It's kind of a similar approach to like, hey, I want to put a vending machine in your place, right? For every dollar that we bring in, you're going to get a piece, right? Just tell where you want the machine to go. It's kind of a similar, I'm not trying to trivialize it, but it's like, hey, I'm going to help you and you're going to tell me how much it's worth. And I'm going to work backwards until we agree on a number. I'm sure, like, you have to know your costs, like you said earlier, but it's very intriguing. Keith, but one of the things that seems to have come out between last call and this call is you guys write software, it sounds like, right? Like you're not just putting in a computer saying, all right, hey, here you go. You know, what do you want me to load on here? You're actually building software too sometimes.
As needed. I mean, not all our clients are development clients, but the fact that you can, and the fact that you can talk that lingo. And I tell it to MSPs, I go, that's a secret. At least know how to integrate things. At least know how to help systems talk to each other at a minimum. Because,
I would say over the last, let's just ballpark it, 5-6 years, MSPs, maybe not even the mature ones, maybe like the guys that are in the middle and maybe the smaller guys, have finally started to get, the people with the knowledge to be able to do like APIs and simple coding and scripting and stuff like that. I mean, I remember even back as not even going to 2010, right? When the RMM started exploding, people were like, dude, I don't have time, or I don't understand how to do all this scripting. And, a lot of guys popped up to help with that, from an outsourcing standpoint, but like there are legitimate guys on staff that actually have development background now in some of these MSPs, where before I don't think that they really even considered that road, Keith. I think that they said, I'm not a developer. I'm a plumbing guy. I want to keep the stuff running. I want to support your end users, but I got to bring somebody else in because it's not what we do. Kind of like, before all this stuff started converging, right? The copier guy was a copier guy. And the phone guy was a phone guy. And the alarm guy was the alarm guy. And the computer guy was a computer guy. And they never, until they did. So it's very interesting in software, right?
You can accomplish those same things with strong strategic partnerships. It's the same thing with security. I sit in a MSP group and all these guys are talking about, I'm going to do remediation. I'm going to do it. You go, you don't know how to do it. So, you could barely do what you've already signed up to do. So if you can't do it, create strategic partnerships with people that know what they're doing and leverage those. You don't have to be a jack of all trades. You can be a generalist that oversees a project, and there's profit in that. And doing it right and delivering the right level of service, which is the same thing we do when we choose our vendors, is how you get past, I have to keep discounting, because you've added real business value. You guys are in voice over IP. Hey, guess what? The phone works. The calls are clear. The sales isn't bitching that they can't make their quotas because the damn phones don't work. Everything integrates with the CRM. Everything's moving smooth, and people stop looking at your bill, and they start going like, "Well, I'm going to look to save 4 cents a minute over here." You're going, "No, this works. Let's leave it alone." Yep. And I think that's what so many people miss. Quit looking at pennies and make dollars. I mean, look at the bigger picture. And by the way, you know, if you're a vendor that provides service to me, if I know I can call you up and say, I got a problem and someone takes care of it, that's worth the money anyway.
Yeah, so I hear it. I've heard it. I mean, listen, I started MSP right before we started BVoIP, and I've been on both sides of that conversation, but it's interesting. And again, I'm not trying to knock I call them, you know, keyboard warriors, right? The Facebooks and the Reddits and the Discords and whatever. But it's like, you shouldn't be going to the forums as your first line of getting help. Like, have you actually tried calling the vendor for at all, right? Has there been any sort of interaction? And when their first response is no, I'm like, what are you doing here? You should go there. You know, like, I don't get it. But maybe they're scared to call, or they don't think they're going to ever get a hold of somebody, which I would say is not the case a lot of the times. But
or maybe it's easier to blame someone else for your failures and take responsibility.
Your customer's not going to go on Reddit and read the 80 comments that come after. I hate to tell you, but
that's definitely. And but you know what? No one on Reddit can help you either.
Sometimes good stuff. Some stuff.
Well, I'm talking about in the bitch sessions. In the bitchy Karen session, everyone just says, life sucks. There's a whole bunch of excuses for my failure, and I have no accountability for my success. And you go, once you take accountability for your failures, do you know how empowered you are? Now I'm getting to something else, but this is what I always told my special needs athletes. Guess what? You're not special. That word's horrible. Tim Shriver named it wrong. It's not Special Olympics. What you want is inclusion. You want your feet in the starting blocks, and that's it. After that, you're on your own. And once you realize that you're exactly where you want to be in life, you cause that. People go, oh, that's harsh. I go, no, that's empowering. Because if you put yourself there, you could change it. And I think the same thing happens with vendor relationships. Guess what, dumbass? You picked that vendor. So if the vendor sucks, you suck at your job, because part of your job is to bringing together a team of resources that can meet your customers' needs.
Yeah, I will say one thing, right? Again, having been on both sides of the tracks here. And Darren, I'd love to get your opinion on this, right? Like, you know, like it's very intriguing to me where you get one guy who's like, oh, I had the best experience ever. These guys are rock stars. I couldn't say enough good things. And then like right next to that person be like, worst experience I've ever had. Would never do it again. Don't go here. And I'm like, once you start getting past the surface level and you actually ask the next level question, which is, well, why did it not go well then? If the other guy did so good, he's like, well, we couldn't ever get it. We couldn't ever get on the phone. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a human being problem, right? Like, were you available? Were they available? Or, hey, you know, like I came and we never got the project done. And I'm like, well, the project requires 2 sides to get done, right? Were you ready with your stuff? Did you have your homework done so that they could help you put it into action? Like, there's a lot of like next level things that come into, is it successful or not? But to your point, Keith, and again, Darren, feel free to jump in if you're interested, but like, like there has to be an accountability somewhere, right? At the end of the day, your customer doesn't, unless they specifically ask, and yeah, there's the Microsofts and the Apples and the Googles, right? The ones that are like household names, but generally speaking, like your customer doesn't ask what you're using for antivirus or backup and disaster recovery or, you know, all the security stuff, right? They're just like, hey, you got me covered. Is it included? Do I have to worry about it? And like when something goes wrong, they're not saying, well, what happened between you and your vendor? They're looking at you, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. So
I can jump in on this. And we had a major problem with a certain security vendor shortly after switching to them back in 2018, where, long story short, their DNS protection module would randomly and completely basically stop allowing the usage of your browser. And when it happened, sometimes it would be a couple dozen machines, sometimes it would be a couple hundred, sometimes it would be all of them. So, and we had recently switched people to this new platform, explaining to them, hey, we're improving your security, and we're taking you to a better level of protection, blah blah blah. And it was a tough thing, because we had to explain something. I mean, I was in a situation where I'm like, well, this is not our incompetence or something like that. There's unfortunately an issue with this new security program, and we're in touch with them, and we ended up having to leave it disabled for months until we did internal. We left the core product on, but we turned the DNS protection off, because we just couldn't risk that it was going to happen again. And we lost a lot of goodwill in that situation, and we ended up taking it all the way to the top with this company, and they were responsive and sympathetic to a point. And they ended up completely revamping the whole way that particular module worked. And knock on wood, we haven't had that happen again. But it was a really tough experience, because we're the ones taking the fall, and it was nothing we could
Okay, Alex, go ahead. Yeah.
So obviously, I mean, that situation sucks, right? There's no beating around the bush there. That situation definitely sucks. And I will say I've seen situations like that before, and the fact of the matter is, you shouldn't have had to go to the absolute top, right, to get an answer. There's one thing to our partner advisory council has direct access to George at all times, right? If they need something, they know they can call him. And that's one of the cool relationships there. But some partners Sons of Tomorrow should never have felt like that was the first line of, defense, to get something done. I will say I've watched companies try to get a lot better with that kind of stuff, which has been great in our space. I look at Pax8, who we see quite a bit through the community, and Ken Patterson's role is out there as the front of community, right? And first line defense, if anybody needs anything, they know they can contact him, and he's great with tagging in people from all different vendors, right? But at the same point,
same like Rob Ray at Data, right? Everybody,
yeah,
like if any vendor hasn't paid attention, like take that as the gold standard approach, right? Like you should have that person, on all of the platforms to be available and accessible. And if you don't, I think you're missing an opportunity. But go ahead now.
Yeah, no, I mean, and actually that used to be more the model, right? You look back to the internal IT guys used to use Spiceworks, and in Spiceworks, one of the things you got when you signed up was who's your champion, your product champion, and that person could be tagged at any time, and it alerted you in 50 different ways, and you were supposed to jump in and talk to whoever it was, whether it was a prospect, a customer, whatever the issue was. I think our industry is getting better with it, and I think this just kind of goes to, I don't want it to be, for lack of a better term, a bitch fest in either direction, right? I mean, I think there's times where, as customers, people are getting angry very fast. I think as vendors, sometimes people are a little bit lax, and it does have to rise to the top. And I think we both have to come to, a good session in the middle and figure out what that crossing mark is. Again, I think we've done better with it, and I want to see it continue to do better. But at the end of the day, it is a partnership, right? If that partner doesn't grow, that's the cool thing about channel sales and channel companies. If our partners don't grow, we don't grow. And if we don't do better, they don't get better products, right?
I'm going to say one thing here that I think really is, and I would love to hear both of your opinion on this. Like, I feel like MSPs have tried so hard to mask the vendors that they're using.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's for fear that the customer might go around them and go direct, or I don't know what, maybe that's a big part of it. But like, if you're not afraid of that, and you do have a true partner on the other side, I don't know any vendor that wouldn't get on a call with you and your customer and say, hey, listen, here's the deal. We ran into an issue. We've identified it. Here's what we're doing to fix it. We want to make sure your experience is good, and we're going to back us and your partner and you, and we're going to make sure it gets straightened. Like, I couldn't imagine any other better situation other than you saying, hey, I'm just going to rip it out and start all over again, which comes with a lot of time investment, right? If somebody from the upstream vendor actually comes and says, no, I'll be in front of that firing squad with you, I just don't see that a lot. I don't know why people are so afraid to actually let that happen. What are your opinion, guys?
Well, I think you've hit on some great extreme points. I hope I don't insult anyone. First of all, shit happens. That's why we get paid the big bucks. 100%. And I'm being dead serious. This business is almost criminal in what we can make by providing service. So we're going to run into roadblocks. That's technology. That's life. Now, how we know how to get around those. And to George's point, and I say this to smaller MSPs all the time, maybe that's why they never invite me. If you're dumb enough to think that your customer actually believes you own the virus company or the internet provider, or whatever you're trying to convince them you own, driving around in your 67 Chevy Impala, you're a special kind of stupid. So the fact that you integrate best of breed is your skill set. Not that I invented antivirus or I own a voice over IP system. So your point is extremely valid. You're saying, and going to your customer and being ahead of the curve is, I think, where a lot of MSPs drop the ball. Mm-hmm. This broke. Now, on another token, I look at, and it's something we run in our shop. You go, wait a minute. As an MSP, did we develop the relationship with the vendor before we signed on the dotted line? Uh-huh. And have we done their academy? Have we gone through the training that says, here's how you navigate my company? So I want to know, if I'm going to do business with your company, I want to know, who do I call when this happens? And who do I call when your response doesn't match the metrics you gave me? Mm-hmm. So it's like, how to work with you, and then I can have that discussion. Says, here's how you work with me, and then we create that ahead of time before there's a sense of urgency. And I would agree. I would send something from you if you were my voice over IP vendor, and you said all our circuits are down. We had a tornado and a hurricane and an earthquake. Every data center was hit. I would just take that and give it right to my customer and just say, this is what we're dealing with about 3,000 other people, and we're working through this. And by the way, is there some way I could help you get all your people set up on their cell phone, whatever we need to do business? And I think it's the second part a lot of MSPs drop. They don't confront it head on. They hide in their office or on Reddit. And you say, just go belly to belly. Go to the same position you were when you asked the guy to sign on the dotted line, which is in front of his face.
I feel like Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was to say that I think some of this is carryover from the old days, right? Of like the initial server, the Dells, right? Back in the day when you'd buy a server and the magazine would show up, the customer would figure out what your markup was, they'd be pissed. I feel like a lot of it is that nervous carryover of those horror stories. I mean, if you're picking true channel vendors, we get direct leads in all the time. They go back to our partners in the areas. We have no interest in supporting those end clients because we're not the turn it on and turn it off again support team. But at the same point, that's just not who we are, right? We were built to, from the ground up, work with the MSPs. I mean, if your vendors are in that category, and it can't always be that way, right? I mean, straight hardware vendors, generally not, things like that. But there's more than enough vendors in the space now that you could go 100% channel only across your vendors. In that case, you have no reason to ever worry about that scenario.
And to Keith's point real quick, Keith's like, hey, did you develop a relationship? Did you go through the program? Did you actually, Keith, I mean, I can't tell you how many times and how many, 80, 100, 150, 200 posts, comments where it's like, I don't want to talk to a salesperson. I'm going to go on your website. I want to sign up for a demo. I don't want to talk to anyone. And if I decide I want to call you, then I will. Otherwise, don't ever call me. I won't answer. And I'm like, how do you build the relationship there? I don't see how you could ever do that. You're talking to a computer screen. And I appreciate zero touch sales and I understand Amazon, but at the end of the day, when you do need something, who did you talk to? You have no relationship, none, zero. You got to just email the CEO. Good luck.
We just signed up for a new frontline help desk. Mm-hmm. And they actually came on and said, here's how you do things right. And a lot of people would find that. And so I went, excellent. Thank you. They taught us a lot about documentation. We had to go through some hoops to do business with them, but the relationship is good. We know how they work. They know how we work. We know each other's expectations. I'm not sitting there expecting them to do something that they said they wouldn't do. And I think there's that huge part of it. It's a partnership. It's not just, I found a way to make another $10 a month from my client. Mm-hmm. It's a partnership of providing service. And for, when I read those negative reviews, I said, do you think XYZ is in business just to screw your customer? That years ago, they sat down and said, let's form a corporation because one day Keith's going to have a customer and I want to put the screws to him.
Oh, yeah.
And even when you look at the mammoths like Microsoft, people say, how do you guys have such a good relationship with Microsoft on your development when you develop these solutions? I said, well, you know what? We go to the regional office and sit through some of their boring ass seminars at times. There's a face. It's not just an email that calls up and says, hey, guess what, Microsoft, you're stupid again. There's someone that we have some relationships with them. And by the way, I think they like the fact that we sit in their seminar and listen to how to do business with them. And we listen to how to use their tools. And so they know we've made, and we're not the big elephant. I mean, there's companies that are 10 times bigger than us, but it was a commitment to a relationship because we needed them. And we look at it that.
Heath has used the word listen a whole lot on this call. If that's not something that I've paid attention to, circle that one and put it up on the wall, because it sounds like that's a really big secret to success. Come on, Darren. I want to hear you, buddy. What's your opinion on this topic?
On white labeling stuff, or I mean, look, I learned too many times with various things years ago that I like people to know what they have and who support, what it is, and that we're not the ones in charge of it. And, you're always going to have issues. I mean, we've had several other situations that were one that was almost as bad, if not worse than that one. And, it's helpful to say, hey, well, it's not our stuff, and we're in touch and we're doing our best to, help get it resolved, but it's out of our control. If that's the context you want. If you want more specific on something else, let me know. What do you?
Well, I just want, I appreciate the white label, right? And a lot of people want to make it be them, right? I mean, there's a guy on the other side of that argument that says, I don't want to put my name on anything, right? If Microsoft goes down, I don't want it to be my fault. I wanted to say, hey, Microsoft's down. We'll do our best to let you know when things are back up and running, right? So there is a double-edged sword to the white label thing.
Yeah, we've never white labeled anything, nor would we ever. It's just, there's way too much risk, and particularly with security today, it's you're finished if they even think for a second that your stuff has been breached somehow. It's just not worth it. So.
Buckle up for that lawsuit.
What was that?
I said buckle up for that lawsuit.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, Darren, would there be any concern from your part, in that one example, to have somebody from your upstream vendor get on a call with you and your customer to try and, I don't know, balance the situation? Or is that even something?
No, so I had to do that, actually. So, but my other, big example is back in 2008, when Hosted Exchange was still a bit newer. We were using a local vendor on Long Island that, we could literally go to their office and, talk to them and see their setup. And it was, oh, this is great, and then one day they went down, hard down fully for it ended up being over a week. And it wasn't a partial outage. It was a full outage. So
the building catch fire?
No, I don't even want to get into it, but okay. Long story short, we ended up switching everybody to Rackspace because Rackspace at the time was, they were big in this game and very reputable and well-known and had a good, okay, so great. So we switched people to Rackspace while this is still down, because obviously what are we going to do? And, within a few months or maybe less, unfortunately, Rackspace had major problems with their hosted exchange. It was their 2007 environment at the time. I mean, where it was horrible. It was just horrible. And I had to get them on the phone with various people to basically say, hey, here's what's going on, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was horrible. We ended up getting, we ended up getting good compensation for that ridiculous situation. But it was like, we switched people from a vendor that was totally down to one that was randomly going up and down over the course of, the next 6 months. And it was like, holy crap, how unlucky could we get here? So, I made damn well sure that every bill that was for this service said, Rackspace hosted exchange. It wasn't, not provided by us. So it just to kind of have it out there.
It's interesting.
You bring up a funny story. There was a time we had an email outage at a client. I mean, stuff happens. And the first thing, we're dead in the water. We can't make any sales. And the general manager thanked me for saying this. I sat at the table. I went to the site, emails down. I'm going to take the heat. And I said, but your phones are working. So do not miss a sale out of spite. If you have something that you're waiting for an email to come back to close a big deal, this was for a hospitality client, I could help you dial your phone, but let's get work done. And the salesperson left a little pouty, but the general manager said, hey, thank you. And so I think, and that's an extreme example, not everyone wants to talk like that, but find the solution. Mm-hmm. That's what we're there for. And that's why I think it's a little different when you segue back to value pricing. My responsibility, or my perceived responsibility, or my perception of my responsibility did not end at the technology. It's let's get business working, and let's be part of the leadership of that organization, which is the concern is make the goddamn sale. And you guys are in sales, you know what? Send a paper airplane note, figure it out, make the sale, and separate the two.
Make a good sale. Because there's such a thing as a bad sale, Keith, right? I mean, somebody overpromised, underdelivered, didn't ask the right questions. Now you're in the implementation phase. Something's way off, right? Like that's the wrong time to find that answer. And, admittedly, hey, we're not perfect, not like anyone else is, but like I've told people, hey, I don't think we're a good fit. Let's unwind this because I think what you're asking for and what we do don't exactly line up. And I'd rather just be upfront about it now.
So I was actually
a good sale is when we both make money. And when someone sits there and says, I hose that guy, you go, you just entered a bad sale. I want to walk away and you buy your boat, I buy my boat, and we call it a day.
So I was going to jump in with that earlier. That zero touch sales process, there's a reason that breaks down, and those relationships generally don't last long, right? Because as you talked about earlier, you're building that relationship. A huge portion in the beginning, at least for our sales process, and many of the companies I've been with, is are you a fit to be a customer, right? Is our product a fit for what your needs are, what your wants are? If it's just straight sell it to anybody that, walks by and smells near the door, that's not a great way to do it because not every product's built for every person. I also think that down the road with, onboarding and other things you touched on there, it's got to be a whole portion of what does it look like from our side? Like, what are we committing to you? But also, what are you committing to us, right? I mean, I've seen too many horror stories of one person internally implemented a product, that person left, nobody knows how to do anything with it, it's been sitting on a shelf for years. So cross-training internally, but also what kind of training materials are we giving you, right? You touched on academies and things like that earlier. It all kind of goes back to that good sale, bad sale. But again, it involves a relationship to kind of keep that train moving.
100%. I mean, listen, longevity counts. I've said that so many times, I've lost track, but I love when we get into all the M&A stuff and people are like, oh, well, how many, you must be doing at least 3 years. And I'm like, the term is good for the bank maybe, but in reality, if your customers are with you forever, like some people are like, oh, my customers stay with me for average of 6 to 10 years. And I'm like, Well, that's better than any 3-year contract. Like what's the trailing situation is usually how that happens. So, you want to keep people around, right? Nobody wants to work, to have to reinvent business every day. But again, coming back to a lot of MSPs are not like Keith who are writing software, but or technology companies are not like Keith who are writing software, but you're going to be only as good as the package that you put together. And if that package is comprised of a lot of upstream entities, which in many cases it is, you need to know where you stand, and you need to know what happens when you need help. And, to Brad Gross's point, and he's been on here several times, I think it was just on like a week and a half ago, maybe in your MSA, you should just spell it out. Hey, I'm not Microsoft. I'm not, SentinelOne. I'm not Azure or AWS, right? Like I'm doing my best to facilitate this technology for you. The upstream vendor is going to do what the upstream vendors do. I'm working on your behalf. And when you put it that way, as long as you're communicating properly, to Keith's point, like you shouldn't be the bad guy. Although, IT is one of those industries where it's like, hey, I don't understand it. Just make it work sometimes. But the other point is like, flip it around, right? Let's say it was an internal IT person. That internal IT person isn't doing everything. They're not running wires in the ceiling. They're not, doing, the coding work all by themselves. They're like, if anything, they're just like the facilitator, right? For the organization to the outside world. I mean, in a nutshell, that's what we're doing in MSP land too, right? So to expect, to Keith's point, like, they didn't create McAfee. They didn't go and do your dark, they didn't create the dark web monitor scanner. They're putting pieces in place as, like hopefully best practice, but, nobody's going to be able to do everything. And I think that's probably an opening salvo, right? Hey, I'm not the be all end all, but I'm going to help get you in a good place. I mean, that's usually the right place to start.
Figure out your needs.
You bring up two great points, George. Number one is not everyone develops software like we do, but everyone has access to software developers. Sure. So put that arrow in your quiver. Mm-hmm. The next thing is, and you'll find this in key management studies, the studies that come out of Stanford's business school. And they talk about what people remember most is not the crisis. They remember the stress from the crisis.
Oh, yeah.
That's what sticks with their mind. So we can all have a Microsoft 365 outage. It'll affect you, me, all your listeners, everyone, to some extent. What your customer will remember is how you helped reduce the noise and stress from that. Now, what I find most MSPs do is Microsoft's down. I'm going to get on Reddit and bitch to other people who are complaining about Reddit's down, about Microsoft's down. You're going like, why aren't you on the phone with your customer? And you know what? There's the black hole of business. In the absence of fact, they're going to create whatever they want. They're going to create their new reality. And their reality, because you're not communicating, is Keith is stupid. He can't run my email and he's hiding in the closet. Now, if I'm out in front of it and I'm saying, Microsoft's down and maybe referencing a news article or a tech notice and saying, they're down. I've put us in line. I'm monitoring it. I will keep you up to date every half hour. And you could do that just by a blind copy group email. Here's the status. Boom, 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 boom. And all of a sudden you've reduced their stress level. You're saying, and instead of them sitting there going, we're down, maybe for life, no one's going to help us. My IT guy's on Reddit complaining. And that's when you're needed the most. No, you don't have a magic wand. Like I've said 1,000 times, we don't wear a cape and have a red S. We can only do what we can do. But we all have ears and a mouth. We can use those.
God forbid the day when the customer stumbles upon their provider on Reddit.
Yeah.
I can only imagine that will not end up well. Guys, we're coming up on the last few minutes. I really want to say that, it sounds like, as we continue these conversations more and more, there's an actual good thought strategy happening, right? If you're listening to the people that are actually in it, right? I know some people do like the lifestyle business, whatever, but like, people are actually thinking intelligently. The security thing is definitely driving a lot of this, right? But the communication with the customer is at the middle of everything. And that's more poignant now than ever. Don't hide from the conversations, right? I think you should have the conversations and have them up front. And if you're worried about losing your customer and you tell them the truth and they're just not jiving with it, you're probably a blessing in disguise, guys. Cause like the last place you want to be is on the other end of lawyers and, you know, battling out the nuances and somebody who doesn't even understand technology very well. And to be honest with you, and I mentioned this to Brad when we had him on, but like the judges don't even understand the technology well. And they're in the middle of trying to decipher the lingo and that, you know, if you're going to leave your fate into their hands, oh boy, I think you're in for a bad day. So I love Keith's value-based approach. I love his position, which is, hey, you don't have to be a be-all, end-all, but know where to go and you have access, which is so true. I love Darren's examples of, hey, stuff breaks and here's what happens in those cases. And yeah, you know, like not great when you kind of stitch together a couple of bad stories in a small period of time, but you know, there is, you know, like the kind of goodwill comment, right? That's a constantly moving, you know, kind of thing. You have to keep on investing into, you know, continue building that out, or else one incident on a really thin relationship or no relationship at all, you know, that's going to end up badly. So, and it's been a great call. It really has been. And for whatever it's worth, the fact that people are willing to share, I think is really important, because I can't tell you how many times still to this day, right? I mean, we're in 2021. I started, you know, in technology, believe it or not, 2000, 2001. And I'm a young guy, but you know, there's still this castle mentality out there. They're really, I just don't, I understand why initially you would like, hey, I got to protect my business, competitors. There's way, way, way more business out there than the people who can service them, to be honest. And I think you're going to learn better from, you know, working with people around you and learning from peers in the industry and like understanding you don't live in your own, you know, universe than learning every hard lesson on your own.
What I would say to that, George, is that with the people that have that castle mentality, is that if that's what's keeping your business afloat, is guarding all this stuff, you know, when a castle falls, it's over. You know, I mean, it's once that gate is breached, you're done. So there needs to be, you know, you have to be looking at it from a different perspective of, if this is all we have, you know what I'm saying? So that's
no, I never used that part, like that. It's specific verbiage, that analogy. It's a great follow through. Right? Hey, you want to live in a castle? You want the moat? All right. When somebody storms it, that's it. There ain't no restart. Right. So yeah, it's a great, I'm going to use that if you don't mind.
You got it. So, minimal trademark fee. Yeah.
I'm gonna throw one quick thing in, just because you touched on security a couple times there, and obviously, I mean, security is a never-ending discussion. I got a sneak peek of next week's schedule, and I believe it's next week. We're gonna have Sade chime in here from the chat, but we have Ryan Burton coming in, who does all the product analysis for Pax8 and what products they work with and what products are out there in the market. And honestly, the discoveries he's made from a security standpoint were pretty amazing across products and what to look for, what to avoid, etc. So he's got a session coming up on that, which should honestly help people a lot with, next week on the 24th. So same time slot, but definitely one to attend or check out the recording if you can't make it.
And to that point, this session and every other session we've ever recorded back from March of 2020 are on mspinitiative.com under sessions. You'll be able to watch, rewind, download. They're all there. You also see Channel Strong on there for our upcoming tour in the Northeast at the end of July. And hey, you might want to throw your name in the hat for a free prize. There's 10, this month, from a combination of all of our kind of sponsoring vendors to, MSP Initiative. So got to enter to win. Doesn't cost anything. Throw your name in the hat. And Keith and Darren, you guys are great. We definitely would love to have you guys come back and continue joining us. And this is what it's all about. Open conversation, right? Let's take everything out of the closet, tear the sheet down, and let's just talk about the reality of, life's not perfect, but it can be better.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Perfect. All right, guys. Thanks. Have a good afternoon.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye.